on Embark Live and Makers Row about marketing strategies and how you can leverage them for growth in your business. So just to kind of make sure everyone's on the same page here, we're broadcasting on multiple different platforms. If you have questions or things that you want to make sure that I get to answer, please let me know. You know, we are now in, gosh, I want to say it's been about 5 or 6 weeks now in quarantine, and finding an excuse to get out of pajamas and get ready to do something exciting is always something that I look forward to. And, you know, my team and I, we've been so busy working with lots of different brands and troubleshooting lots of different questions that ultimately, guys, the ability for us to be able to be active, to be able to get information out, I think is one of the most exciting things that we can do. So just so you guys know, all hands on deck. If you have questions around marketing, around growth for your business, this is definitely going to be the time to get those questions answered. And as far as, you know, where you can find out more about scaling retail and what we do, you know, Embark Live is going to be launching pretty soon. So make sure that you stay on top of when that launch is happening, and you'll be able to find Scaling Retail and myself on there. And then also on Makers Row, you can find the Scaling Retail profile. So a little bit about myself and what we do at Scaling Retail. We are a team of growth-oriented strategists. So we work with brands all across different countries, anywhere from Africa, Tanzania. We also work with clients in Hong Kong. We have clients all over the US. We work with a global group of fashion retail clients, working on all sorts of different kinds of projects. And what's really exciting about the work that we do is we are essentially, you know, C-suite executives. So we'll come into a business, help them strategize, figure out how to reinvest resources, and ultimately, you know, grow their businesses or launch their businesses in the most efficient way possible. So when it comes to kind of these types of marketing strategies or growth strategies, the things that I actually find to be the most helpful, right, when it comes to how you're able to position is ultimately where you're looking at reinvesting your resources. So today, as we're kind of going over marketing, we're going to talk a lot about reinvesting capital, how you might be able to look at marketing strategies in a way that's actually doubling down on your bottom line. So how you can actually test and pivot and iterate. And then hopefully you guys will walk away with some actionable strategies to be able to take forward as you guys are using marketing to leverage and to establish yourselves. Now, let's go ahead and kind of lay the groundwork here of marketing. You know, one of the things I think is so important is that the majority of brands that end up launching do not put enough money for their marketing budgets. And so what does it end up looking like? Well, if you don't have enough money in your marketing budget, then chances are you are spending your money incorrectly. You know, the majority of brands that I see that come to us, you know, they've spent X amount of resources on production, they're spending money on all sorts of things, but they have yet to really stop and say, how much is it going to cost for me to sell this product? And so when I'm looking at marketing strategies, I'm also looking at sales strategies. And so that ends up being kind of hand in hand, right? How can I execute a strong sales component and then also be leveraging the marketing component of that? And ultimately, when we see the brands that are the most successful, they've actually gone into their experiments and gone into the landscape of launching through the lens of, okay, this is how much I'm spending on year 1. This is how much I'm spending on year 2, year 3. These are the kinds of ROIs and investments that I'm looking to get from this. And this is how I know that I'm actually seeing some traction. It's not simply that you guys know that you have to do social media, and so social media becomes important. What becomes important is what's the traction that you're getting? What does it mean to be on a social platform? And how are you actually able to leverage that? So that's really the first step. It's establishing what those budgets are, and it's making sure that you understand what your reinvestment looks like. The other thing that I see a lot of brands do is they've only allocated enough spend for the first year, and that's ultimately not going to help you when it comes to marketing initiatives. When it comes to just the first year, you're really just looking to establish your brand. Chances are you won't have even hit full market penetration within year 1. Certainly it depends what your brand is, but if you think about it, guys, companies that have been around for 10 years are the ones that you're seeing really pop up. I mean, it's very hard unless the product and the timeliness of the brand is just of the moment. It's very hard to kind of establish and get press and get those kinds of marketing reaches in a short period of time. So when you're looking at your budget, it's very important to take a step back and say, Okay, how am I looking to reinvest my resources here? Do I have a year's worth of a marketing spend? Do I have 2 years worth of a marketing spend? And then starting to work backwards and asking yourself, well, what are the marketing channels that my customer actually exists on? Now, if you don't know what those channels are, a lot of that has to do with kind of your communication and marketing strategy. Again, another thing that a lot of brands don't often pay attention to, right? So when you're thinking about what that marketing strategy is or that comm strategy, that's really where you establish the different channels of who your customer is. So you're establishing, where they are, what kinds of media content that they end up consuming. Are they more prone? Are they in Los Angeles? They're in their car, so they're looking at billboards. Are you sending them direct mail? Is it someone who lives in an urban environment? Are they on their mobile phone 90% of the time? Really starting to unpack that customer and how they find out about your brand and what's important to them becomes a very important critical piece here when it comes to knowing how to spend your money. Can't tell you how often people will come to us and say, Syama, can your team help us launch and execute marketing? And I have to tell them, no, we won't, because you don't actually understand your customer well enough, or your foundational pieces of your brand are really missing some huge components. And so when we're looking at what those foundational pieces are, right, in essence, we're basically looking at, is your website conversion optimized, right? Do you have the right photography? Do you have the right copy on there? What does it actually look like, to be able to get in front of that customer? Before you spend a single dollar on a Facebook ad, you should know exactly how you're planning on optimizing that ad and ultimately who it's for. So again, a lot in the setup phase, more so than you might think. And then as you're executing, a lot of it has to come with pivoting or pursuing. So you set up the experiment. You say, okay, we're going to try this kind of advertising here for, this kind of advertising for the next 30 days. We plan to see these kinds of metrics and KPIs. This is where we're measuring ourselves to. Okay, did we hit these metrics? Did we not? Like, what actually ends up happening? And then you decide, okay, are we going to pivot from this strategy, or are we going to continue to pursue this strategy? This iterative process is something that a lot of founders don't actually pay attention to, because they're so ready to just hit marketing and hit that button. But without having someone who's actually has their eye on it, there's no point in doing it, right? It's almost as if you're, hey, I'm going to take on marketing myself, but do you actually have 90% of your day to be following up and making iterative changes on ads and keeping up with ad spend and knowing how things are working and why? So the DIY approach to launching your own advertising is simply one that I found to be pretty inefficient. It used to be that, you could put some money on a Facebook ad and see some great results with having minimal targeting, having minimal kinds of, experience behind it. But those are what we would call the good old days. Since then, guys, we've seen the different kinds of algorithms that are changing. All of a sudden, Instagram, you're at the top, you're at the bottom, no one can see you. So this notion that you can kind of DIY your own marketing is really no longer the case. It does take a significant amount of strategy. It takes a significant amount of time and energy to be able to do it and to do it well. So if you guys are telling me, well, I only have $1,000 a month to spend, I'm going to say, well, I don't know if it's worth it for you to do Facebook ads. You might want to find some other channels and places where you can spend those resources, or you may want to save your money over the next 6 months. You have $6,000 to spend and do something that's a much larger, kind of more substantial campaign. So again, it's about how are we allocating those resources through these different channels, and then how are you actually able to know how much to spend and what those results should look like. So I'll give you another kind of term that we use in marketing is we look at your cost of acquisition, right? Your customer acquisition cost. And that ends up being the amount of money you end up spending in order to get a customer to convert. When you're running Facebook ads or, pay-per-click, you'll see, this is the cost to get someone to convert. Depending on the kind of brand that you're at, guys, you might be looking at $120 or $90 in the beginning to get someone to convert. That's pretty par for the course, unless your product is very unique, it's specialized, and it's kind of hitting a specific market, you might be spending quite a bit of resources to do that. Now, what's been exciting is we've been seeing with some of our clients, customer acquisition costs down to, $3, right? Or $5 or $7. But that's not always standard. And so when you hear people say, oh yeah, we can get your cost per click down, right? It's different than what the acquisition cost is, right? So a cost per click is how much it costs to get someone to click on your ad. Be careful with that. If you're targeting the right person, that cost per click might actually be quite high. Whereas if you're just targeting a very blanketed audience just to get traffic to your site, you might get a very low cost per click. So a lot of these things are quite nuanced, not to discourage you from looking at advertising and marketing through the lens of a startup and being scrappy. But if you don't have the experience in that, my biggest piece of advice would be to think about what you can do well. First assess your budget, assess your timelines. When do you need these marketing initiatives to kick in? Advertising is not one of those things that you want to start and then stop because you want to be able to take consistent and iterative learnings of what's happening. So I always tell people, if you're going to start doing advertising, you got to do it consistently. You have to keep on building. So let's talk a little bit about some of the cheaper forms of advertising, right? Or what we like to call arbitrage, right? Where can we get kind of the attention arbitrage, right? It's a Gary Vaynerchuk term that I just love so much. It's essentially, how do you find people's eyeballs, and then how do you basically capture and captivate those eyeballs and find it in the lowest cost methodology. So these days, when it comes to attention arbitrage, right, it used to be everyone would say, okay, well, what's the platform that's the newest, that's the hottest, and how can I be on that platform? So for a lot of brands these days, it might be TikTok. Now, what I think is so interesting is that I would never just suggest that everyone go on TikTok. And why is that? Well, because your customer may not actually be on that. So even as you're looking for these lower and cheaper forms of marketing and advertising, you really do have to benchmark that with, okay, what's the probability or likelihood that I'm actually getting in front of my ideal customer, and how is it that I'm actually going to be able to convert them? And if I'm just getting a lot of cheap eyeballs on the brand, but the brand isn't actually a brand and a customer fit on the platform, is it even worth to do it at all? So when you're in the startup phase, you may want to say, well, I want to get a lot of traffic to my site. But my question would be, do you want just a lot of traffic, or do you want the right traffic? The right traffic might cost you. At the agency, we always talk about, 6 different customer touch points, and we like to create these ecosystems so that we can kind of consistently build around brand, and we can consistently be building around what we think is the most important. And so when we're looking at building brand, we're looking at not just your advertising, right? So today's topic is on marketing strategies. So we're not just looking at your advertising budget on, let's say, social, but we're also, when it comes to marketing, we also want to look at what are the different kinds of activations that you're doing with PR. Do you have a PR platform that you're using, that you're working well with? What are you doing for your newsletter advertising, right? What are you doing in terms of, let's say, pay-per-click, right? What are you doing in terms of your organic social? So not just paid, but also organic. Developing those different touch points become really critical as you start to peel back and understand what's the most important component here for driving sales. It's really going to become building your own unique ecosystem and then maintaining it. Now, the other thing that a lot of startup marketers tend to do incorrectly is branding. And it's not just, hey, I need to throw up any old ad. And this is where I sometimes get to differ with other people who are not as in love with the concept of brand as I am. But I am customer obsessed and brand obsessed. And because I'm both customer obsessed and brand obsessed, I truly believe that in order to be able to execute a successful launch or to be able to execute a successful campaign, it's got to be about building up the brand in a way that is strong with the value system of that brand, but also, guys, in alignment with what the customer wants, right? At the end of the day, we are building these brands and these products for the customer, right? We're not just building it for ourselves. So if you end up building something that's for yourself, but the customer doesn't want it, then what the hell was the point of doing it in the first place? So when I take a look at these kinds of cohesive and consistent launches, we establish what are the 6 different touch points. What is the frequency, so the cadence that you're going to be establishing these? What is the copy? What are the images looking like? How resonant is that? So the worst thing that I hate to see is when a brand has a beautiful campaign and then you go back to the website and the website's super shitty. Definitely don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you're consistently creating this ecosystem of a narrative. And if the narrative is not right, then the customer can smell BS and you're not going to get the follow through on the sale. So again, guys, it's not just about getting people in through funnels. Ultimately, I am sales oriented. I'm not traffic oriented. I'm not oriented on, getting a certain number of clicks or the cost per click. I'm oriented around sales. I'm oriented around how are we building the right ecosystem to have the best customer lifetime value. When you're launching your business or in your first year or so, you may not know how often people are purchasing from you. You're kind of fine-tuning and testing things. It's not enough to just get a bunch of first-time consumers. In fact, it ends up becoming a poor business model to have a lot of first-time consumers, especially if it's going to cost you $120 to convert that consumer. You want to make sure that your price points and your merchandising strategy are also in alignment to keep customers coming back over and over again. In fact, I have a great client that I'm working with right now. And one of the biggest things that we started working on together was, what are your merchandising cycles, right? Hi Isabel, what are your merchandising cycles? What is the frequency and the cadence, right, by which you are delivering product, and your product simply becomes the nucleus. So Nicole, this is actually, all this is live. It's also going to be posted up on YouTube, and I think there'll also be a replay on Facebook as well. So I'm so pleased that you're enjoying it. But a lot of this really, again, stems from the nucleus of the product, right? So frequency of product, what's the price point of the product? If you have a product that is not branded towards a luxury consumer, now at that price point, then don't market to a luxury consumer. So sometimes there's a disconnect between who you are, who you think you are, and then what the customer actually perceives and what the customer actually wants. And that, I think, is one of the core fundamentals of what a lot of brands end up missing is that disconnect. And it's a lot more of an intimate conversation. Marketing becomes the insights into the heart and soul, but also the pocketbook of your customer. And without understanding the emotional drivers and understanding the touch points and the places, you actually don't grow at all. You'll just kind of flounder around in a wild west of marketing. So let's kind of break down some of the marketing strategies that I think are the most effective right now. So the first that I love that you'll always hear me talk about is direct mail. So direct mail is one of my favorites. And I love direct mail so much. In fact, I think direct mail is just really a great way, especially in today's market, so that you can actually get someone to see your product, right? They really see the thing. It's a lot more intuitive, It's one of those things where you see a postcard and it sticks with you. And today we're all in quarantine, guys. Direct mail is going a lot further than people think, So mail, it's important. Other strategies. So public relations. There have been so many articles out there around how PR is a dying art form. I can tell you and reassure you, it is not. Every single client that we end up working with is, we always encourage them to work with public relations, and we absolutely love what PR can do for businesses. Think of it like this. Would you rather go out and have to make, 1,000 friends and keep up all those relationships? Or wouldn't it be nice if someone else could have 1,000 friends that were the right 1,000 friends that you needed in order to help you amplify your brand, and you didn't have to do all that hard work? So think of PR as an extension of your brand. It's an extension of you. In my mind, it's indispensable. We absolutely need it. And at Scaling Retail, we partner with some very clutch PR agencies that end up being a lot of our secret sauce. So when people are like, who are you using? Who's the person? I'm going to say, well, I don't know if I'm going to tell you because it's part of the secret sauce to, our brands being in Oprah, Martha Stewart, New York Magazine. And one of the reasons why people come and work with us, right, is because we're able to connect and network them into the right relationships in order to have the best success. But it's very important. So PR, I think, is an amazing component to a marketing strategy that should not go underlooked or overlooked. The other thing in terms of a good marketing strategy, and something that people often always get wrong, is, oh, I have an Instagram account, so it must mean that I'm doing it well because I'm on it. That is also not correct. There is no point in hiring someone or executing on a social media marketing strategy without a communication strategy. If you do not have a communication strategy, you probably shouldn't be doing any sort of marketing at all unless you have an expert marketer who is on your team, or you're the founder and you come from a marketing background. But otherwise, you need to be very clear and consistent about what the messaging is, the frequency and delivery, and the type of content you're delivering. Okay, so those are a few points on marketing strategies. Again, guys, this is Syama from Scaling Retail, and a little bit more before we kind of look to sign off. Number one, please leave comments and questions. This is definitely your time. So if there's anything around anything around marketing that you guys are currently working on, would love to be able to facilitate and support you in finding that. I can tell you that when it comes to marketing budgets and spends, for us, when we're looking at clients and supporting them, to make a budget meaningful, you guys should have between $2,000 to $20,000 a month on a spend. If it's less than $2,000 a month, I'd say focus on your organic stuff. Don't spend a lot of money on some of the advertising, kind of blanketed advertising initiatives, because you're simply not going to get very far. The other thing is to set up what your yearly budget is. I also don't, I don't encourage brands who are like, hey, I only have $10,000 to spend this year. I want to spend it all in marketing. I actually don't think that's correct either. So when it comes to the ecosystem of where marketing plays a role in your business, it basically looks like this. You have your merchandising, which is your product, and your product consistency and delivery and cadence. So super, super important to nail down the product. You also have your, sales component. So how am I selling all of this? You also then have your marketing component on top of merchandising. So again, how are we kind of moving through the cadence of this product? Very, very important. Once you kind of solidify those things, you can then start to work backwards into financial projections, because now sales, marketing, and product orientation. You can then also work back into operations, because operations is now a system of also, sales, marketing, and product. So everything kind of comes down to sales, marketing, and product, and then you start to build outwards what your strategy looks like. All right, guys. Well, that might be all from me today. I will be back on Makers Row and Embark Live over the next few weeks. These guys have got me coming back for more. I love being able to share insights and share with you the tips and tricks and things that are really working. Every time I get on the phone with the prospect, I always ask them, are you sure you want to be in this industry? Are you sure that you want to be able to build something here? And I think that is a very, very important thing to consider, which is, this industry, guys, is not built for everyone. It's hard. It takes a great deal of grit. It takes flexibility of mind. It takes flexibility of pocketbook and resources, and it requires longevity. So those of you guys who are looking to launch businesses, or you're in your first year or two of your business, be committed. Be committed for 5 to 10 years. Be committed. Be committed to seeing this through. As an entrepreneur, your first business is often not your last business. So if you actually want to make a difference, and like me, you have the sickness of the entrepreneur, which means you just can't help yourself, then be smart about it. Look at your career lifespan going forward, and set yourself up to succeed, guys. So the right budgets, the right timing, the right product, the right strategy. Get everything stacked up into your corner so that when it comes time to launch and scaling, you are actually, you're actually doing the most that you can to be able to maximize that. All right, I'm going to take one question, and then guys, I got to sign off because my time is running up. Okay, can I share more on best communication strategies for a post-pandemic season? That's a great question. Guys, when it comes to post-pandemic, everyone's going to be ready to let their hair down, and they're going to really want to be out there socializing and engaging. Dare I say, just as recently as the other weekend, people were starting to do that in New York City. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? I don't know. I'm scared, right? I want to say yes. We want to let our hair down and go socialize. But boy, do we need to be careful and safe. We're still not out of the clear yet. So, post-pandemic, I don't know when that is. I was thinking at first, hey, we're going to be in the clear sometime around June. Now it looks like it's going to be the late summer. I'm also hearing from a number of industry insiders that, Q3 is going to be a big one for us, looking around September. And certainly the holiday season is going to be fast approaching, and people are going to want to shop and spend. So when you're talking about communication during pandemic, post-pandemic, the first thing is don't be deaf, right? Listen, hear, communicate. Don't not listen as a brand. You really have to pay attention to what is happening within your communities and the people who you're servicing. If you are not in touch with them, right, you will fail them. And if you fail them, they're going to leave you. So make sure you don't do that. And the best way to do that is to be honest, be transparent, communicate often, make sure that your communicating is on brand. Speak as a founder. If you have a founder profile, make sure that your founder profile is being elevated into a thought leadership platform. And make sure that you're taking advantage of the opportunity that everyone is stuck at home right now. And everyone's looking for ways to be delighted. They're looking for ways to be excited. And they're sad because no one wants to be stuck inside. So be authentic, and I think if we're authentic, I think that we're all going to win at the end of the day. The brands out there that are pretending like nothing's happening are failing. And guess what? A lot of those brands were the big box retailers that weren't doing very well to begin with. So even though we're seeing a lot of companies shut down, it's very important to ask yourself, was that company already on its way to shutting down before this happened? Was there a P&L off? Was their marketing strategy off? Were they disconnected with the consumers and the trends of where retail is heading? Most of the time, the answer is going to be yes. And that's why a situation or an event like this, of course, all of retail is taking a blow right now in terms of sales. But see who's taking a blow in terms of brand. The ones that take a blow in terms of brand are the ones that are never going to recoup their sales. The ones that stay consistent and authentic with their brand and their communication are the ones that will rebound. All right, guys, that's all from me. I'm Syama Meagher. I'm the CEO of Scaling Retail. Come find me wherever you are, and I will talk to you likely next week. All right, make sure you watch this replay, guys. It'll be on Facebook, YouTube. Share it with your friends. Share it with your peers in your community. I'm very happy to be of service. Talk to you soon.